What's up, guys? Ever since I can remember, I've always wanted to build a railroad in my backyard. And when I say I want to build a railroad in my backyard, I don't mean like a little G-scale railroad. I want to build a railroad that I can actually sit and ride on and use it to like move goods and services and stuff around. You know, like take a train to the mailbox or drop some stuff off at the shop. You know, those kinds of shenanigans that everybody wants to put in their backyard. In a previous video on my channel, you saw that I built a 60-foot flat car, and this was kind of to see if I could get my feet wet in the hobby. I'm just going to let you in on a little secret. I loved it. So I have gone completely off the deep end into this hobby. I've been designing, I've been building, and I've got a lot of stuff to show you on this channel, so hit that subscribe button to see some more. In this video, we're going to be building a 1.6 inch or roughly 8 scale Rio Grande wide vision caboose. Now, why did I decide to build a caboose as my second car? Because every good railroad has one, and I definitely want one running around my backyard. So why don't we go ahead and get building? Now, to get this build started, the first thing I needed to do was to build the frame portion of the caboose. For this, I needed the floor sheet and all the frame pieces. The entire caboose gets built off of the floor sheet, so this is an excellent place to start. I designed this caboose to be assembled with tabs and slots, so it's kind of like a big metal 3D jigsaw puzzle. All the pieces on this caboose are easily located with their tabs and slots, making this thing super easy to build. To get the frame going, I just placed the parts into their corresponding slots, as we can see here, and welded everything in place. For those of you that want to build this caboose yourself, make sure you check out the detailed build video after watching this one for a more detailed version of how this is built. Once the frame was all welded together, we could put the trucks and couplers on and flip it over so we could start working on the top side of the caboose. I started by welding the sides and the end of the caboose to the floor sheet. I'm not the greatest welder, and while welding the frame to the floor sheet, I did induce a little bit of warping, so I used the sides and the ends to square it up and straighten out the floor of the caboose. I just used a clamp to suck everything down right before I welded it up. That seemed to work pretty well, but I did melt my clamps quite a few times. Look, I know I'm gonna get a bunch of hate in the comments section for using plastic clamps for welding metal shit together, but the quick grips fit the bill and they work perfectly for putting these things together. It won't be the first or the last time I use clamps like this for welding. Anyways, back to the build. After the sides and ends were welded on, we had to flip the caboose over one more time because we needed to weld up the stairs. To start this section of the build, I needed to weld on the front platform part that the stairs would be built onto. Once that was done, I just worked my way up, starting from the bottom stair, building up as I went. This seemed to work out pretty well. This part of the build was a little bit tedious because I had to do it on all four corners of the caboose. Before flipping it over, I added a couple more welds where I thought they needed them, knocked down all the sharp edges with a grinder, and then reinstalled the trucks. With the caboose now flipped back over, I could start working on the cupola or the cab of the caboose. To do this, I set the cupola ends in the caboose and made sure the bottom and the side part sat flush. Once I had everything in place and where I wanted it to go, I welded everything together. Next up is the roof sections. I designed this caboose so that all three roof sections could be easily removable. At some point, I'd like to put an interior in it, so being able to remove the roof to better see the interior was the thought process behind this. In the meantime though, it is a great place to store a small cooler bag or maybe even a backpack if you plan on spending the day down at your local track. These pieces you see me mounting here are the braces that the removable roof will get welded to. They get tapped and drilled so the roof gets screwed into the rest of the caboose when you don't want it to be easily removed. We'll get a better look at how all this goes together a little bit later in the video. And once again, if you want to build this caboose, there is a far more detailed build video on my channel, so if you're planning on building this thing, go check that out because it answers a lot of questions. Anyways, let's get back to the build. All right, these are set in here nicely so we can move on to the other side of the caboose. For this, we're going to need our end pieces. There is a specific way that this needs to go. There are two little holes that are drilled down on the bottom of these parts, and you want to make sure that they line up with the two holes that are down here on the platform. And this is because we're going to weld it on here and then there's going to be a ladder. So if you flip it around and you've got your holes in the wrong spot, it's not going to work out. So make sure when you weld these end pieces on, you keep those holes aligned for the ladder. To get this piece mocked up, I just used some magnetic squares to hold it in place and then a clamp to kind of set everything in there well. Once I thought everything looked good, I just gave it a tack weld, checked the fit once again, and then welded everything in place for the final time. With this step done, I then decided to start working on the ladder. For this, I just took my 3mm tap and tapped these 4 mounting holes for the ladder. Once that was done, I was able to come in with the ladder supports, check the fit, and screw them in place. Once they were screwed in place, I then came in with my tap drill, and then I also tapped all the holes for the ladder rungs. The ladder rungs I bought from Precision Steel Car. They're 2¼ inches long, and they make this build look so much more realistic. Well, we've got enough of this caboose done that you can kind of see how this is going to go together. So we've got our roof walks, our eventually removable roof, and then all these little black parts are the 3D printed window parts. Got the 3D printed smokestack there. Coming around to the other side, you can see that we've got a ladder. We'll have a couple more posts, but this is starting to look pretty good. With the ladder in, I could start working on the posts you see on the platform. For the posts, I just used 3/16 round bar. I placed them where I wanted them to go and then marked them, cut them off, and then welded them in place. Actually looks pretty good. Now we can finally move on to the roof. I clamped the roof pieces in place and then I welded them to the removable roof brackets. This was a bit tricky since I had to reach all the way up inside the body of the caboose to get to the inside bracket. Here goes the fun stuff. See if I can get all the way up in here. God damn it. Wow. If you have longer arms and aren't a hobbit like me, that'll be a lot easier. So to remove the roof, take this one out. And take this one out. The moment of truth. Oh, yeah. That's sick. So if you're sitting at Train Mountain or something and somebody walks by and goes, man, that is a really nice caboose. And then they look in the windows and they go, holy shit, does that thing have an interior in it? You can be like, oh, but yes, it does. You whip the roof off, and then you're able to look in and see all the seating, the bathroom, the wood-burning stove, the whole shebang. It's just going to add a lot. I do think this removable roof is a pretty neat option. I am glad that I took the extra time to design and build it. So now we will continue on with just the roof. We'll continue welding the back of this on. You can see my welds here look like Ray Charles welded it with his feet because I was reaching way up inside the caboose. So we'll just finish welding the back parts of these on, maybe put a couple down here, and then we'll continue our way forward. And we'll be doing the same thing that we did for this removable roof, for the cab roof or the cupola roof, and then for the short roof on the back as well. The process for the roof and the remaining sections is exactly the same. I'm marking and grinding my removable roof mounts, tapping the holes, and only welding the roof sections to the mounts themselves. After this is complete, we can work on the walkway. Because there isn't enough clearance to get a welder underneath the walkway once it's installed, I elected to mock everything up, remove the main walkway part, and then weld the walkway supports to the top of the roof. Once this was done, I was able to put the walkway back on, and then I welded the walkway to the sides of the roof mounts. With this all finished up, we were able to start moving along to our 3D printed detail parts and finishing up the caboose. All right, this caboose is looking great. We are to the point where if you didn't want to do any more detail work, it's already a great looking caboose. But we're going to continue and we're going to do a little bit more detail work. We're first going to finish off all of our railings and everything here. There's also some 3D printed brake stands. If you're going to go the 3D printed route, I'll show you how to install those. So we're going to go ahead and finish up the railings up front, in the back. We'll add some 3D printed details, and then we're going to get on to painting. To finish up the ends of the caboose, I started by setting my 3D printed brake stand where I wanted it to live. I then tapped and drilled the mounting holes for the stand, and then I could finish up the railings. For this, I just bent a piece of 3/16 round steel to the profile that I liked, and then welded it into place. All right, now we'll just kind of put our brake wheel in there. I'm going to take this brake stand out to paint, but I just want to show you guys kind of how it goes together. That looks so good. Not perfect. Nothing handmade ever is. But once it gets paint on it, I don't think you really know the difference. We got two small things to do, and then we're done with the detail work. We can move on to painting. So in the design, I have included these two holes here that are for these Precision Steel Car Caboose grab irons. So we're just going to tap these. I've already pre-drilled the holes. We're going to run a tap through them, and then we'll just bolt it on. Tapping the holes for these Caboose grab irons was a pretty exciting process for me because I knew that I was pretty close to being done with this build. However, there was just like one more thing we had to do before we paint the caboose, and that was install these 3D printed roof ribs. Now, these aren't necessary if you don't want to print these. However, I do think they add quite a bit of realism and they're really easy to install. You just slide them in and then snap them into the pre-drilled holes that's in the laser cut file for the roof. We can finally move on to painting. To get this thing ready for paint, I just took my grinder and knocked off all the high spots on the Caboose. And then once that was done, I just took a paper towel with some Simple Green and wiped everything down really good to get rid of all the grease so that the paint actually would stick. After that, I moved it outside into the J.T.Engineering paint booth, and I gave the Caboose 3 good coats of flat gray primer. For all the paint I'm using in this video, it's just Rust-Oleum spray paint. Once the paint had dried, I could start actually putting down some color. I first decided to start with the silver portion of this build. Now, if you look at the Rio Grande wide vision cabooses, you can see that the roofs are typically silver and there's a little silver stripe around the bottom. The reason I decided to start with silver is because it's the lightest color, meaning that I can start with the silver color, mask it off, then go to yellow, and then go to black, which is the darkest. If I spray painted the base layer of black, it would have been nearly impossible to get all of my colors to look right. Once my silver coat dried, I was able to mask off all the sections that I wanted to remain silver, and then I was able to put down a yellow base coat. I did 4 to 5 coats of the yellow base coat, mainly because I still had some spots where the gray primer was shining through the yellow. I let the yellow base coat dry for a few days, and then I went around with a piece of cardboard and masked off anywhere that I didn't want to get the black sprayed. The technique with the cardboard actually worked out pretty well from keeping overspray going onto the yellow, but I did have a couple of touch-up spots. Then I let all of this dry for about 3 to 4 days, and then I was able to pull off the masking and reveal the nice paint job that I had below. We're still missing a crucial part to the visual aspect of this build, and that's these awesome graphics the Rio Grande had on the wide vision cabooses. Since I'm planning on continuing to build and design my own equipment, I decided it was time for me to learn how to do graphics as well. To make my graphics, I designed them in CAD, and then I used a vinyl cutter I bought off of my local classifieds to cut them. These vinyl decals were made in layers. You can see in this time lapse that I started with the black base shape, and then I worked my way up with different colors, stacking the pieces of vinyl on top of one another until I had the decal built. For this being my first time making and designing graphics, I'm super stoked with how these came out. Once they were finished, I transferred them onto a piece of vinyl transfer tape and then carefully placed them on the caboose, making sure that I didn't get any air bubbles under the vinyl, because we all know how much that sucks. Every time I put graphics on one of my projects, I'm always amazed at how much realism and life that it brings into the model. What an amazing way to pay homage to the Rio Grande right here in my garage. Once all the graphics were installed, I decided to put a nice clear coat on the entire caboose. I've found that on some of my other models, applying a clear coat like this over the top of the vinyl decals actually kind of helps to glue everything in place and keeps the vinyl decals from peeling up later. With the paint and decals all applied, all that was left to do was to install the rest of the detail parts. First up were the windows. These windows have a 3D printed window frame and then a plexiglass panel that gets epoxied into the back of them. To install these, I just set them in and then glued them in place. I'm really glad I took the extra time to design these. I think the polycarbonate glass on these windows adds a nice touch of realism and makes it look like a more finished product. There's not just a hole sitting in the side of the caboose. Once all the windows were glued in place, I just reattached all the grab irons I had removed for the painting process. I reinstalled the trucks, reinstalled the couplers, and then we were finally ready for our first test run down some tracks. I don't have any track laid in my backyard, well, at least not yet. I will have a series of videos coming out over the next few months about building a railroad in my backyard, so if you want to see that, make sure you hit subscribe. Anyways, for me to test this piece of rolling stock, I needed to load it on my trailer and head down to my nearest track. This caboose was really easy to load and unload. It's not super heavy, so you could easily load this caboose in the back of a small SUV or a smaller pickup truck. And once I was at the track, unloading this thing was also a breeze. This caboose looks absolutely amazing. I am so incredibly happy with how this turned out. The small printed details such as on the roof ribs and the window frames and the smokestack make an immense amount of difference to me. It made the caboose look like an actual caboose and not just a box with wheels rolling down the track. I'm also glad that I spent as much time as I did on the painting process. Painting is my least favorite thing in the world, but taking my time and making it right ensured that I got good coverage and this caboose should last for years to come. On a side note, the GP40 you see in this video was out for testing as well. The GP40 is built basically the same way the caboose was, and those plans are also available for sale on my website, along with the plans for GP38. So if you're looking to build a nice looking engine, head over to my website when you're done with this video, and make sure to hit subscribe so you know when the video for that project is published here on my channel. At the time of editing this video, I've had the caboose and the GP40 out testing twice. On both occasions, this caboose has performed extremely well. I've had 0 derailments and no other issues regarding track problems or being able to run the car itself. I have had a few of my roof ribs come unglued, but that's not a big deal since I can just re-glue them down and secure them better for future use. Overall, I think I'd give this caboose an A-. It looks the part, it runs well, it's straightforward to build, and having somewhere to store my backpack and filming stuff during the day was a major bonus.
I am so glad I took the extra time while designing this caboose to make sure it was easy to assemble for a beginner, making it an excellent addition to your backyard railroad, or at a minimum, a great way to get somebody into the hobby and get their feet wet and get somebody in the garage building.
Well guys, that's a wrap on this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed building this caboose. If you want to build yourself a caboose, you can head over to JTEngineeringModels.com, download your files, laser cut your sheet metal, print those parts, and you are off to the races. If you want to support this channel in a different way, you can hit that subscribe button or leave a comment down below and let me know if there's any other rolling stock that you'd like to see me build. Until I see you guys again, make sure you always eat your green vegetables, and I'll catch you in the next one. Adios.